The first week of preseason is in the books. Who stood out to us? Plus, young guys are getting paid while veterans are buying their proverbial deathbeds. That's coming your way on Grey Duck NFL Show. Hello and welcome to the Grey Duck NFL Show. I'm your host, Josh Kolodziejski, and each week we deliver thoughtful analysis, clear-eyed discussion, and an informed perspective on the National Football League, covering the games, trends, performances, and storylines that define the season. Whether you follow every snap or simply enjoy sharp football conversation, you're in the right place. So let's get started. We are part of the Grey Duck Sports Network here on the Grey Duck NFL Show. Go ahead and give us a follow over on Grey Duck Sports on Twitter and YouTube, and at grey.duck.sports on TikTok. There you will find links to all of our podcast episodes, as well as clips from those podcasts and different series of shorts that we are working on throughout the calendar year. Again, that is at Grey Duck Sports over on Twitter and YouTube, and at grey.duck.sports over on TikTok. Another long show with a lot of stuff to get into. We've got our first week of preseason finally wrapped up. We will go over the scores of those quickly, while also skimming through some standout performances, or some performances that look standout on the surface but maybe don't pass the smell test. I've got a list of names to talk about there. Then we'll get into your news, including a new extension for Devon Witherspoon of the Seattle Seahawks, one of their top players on that defense that led the team to the Super Bowl. He just got paid, plus a couple other extensions and some veterans that are maybe over the hill, finding one last home, perhaps, before hanging it up. Finally, we'll do some injuries and then go into our next segment, or our next edition of the Grey Duck Top 250, where we rank the top 250 players in the NFL heading into the 2026 season, going position by position and doing the top 32 at each position. Today, we are talking about running backs. So that is the plan for tonight's show. Hope you enjoy it, but let's get started with some preseason football. Yes, week number 1 is done, unless you're the Arizona Cardinals or Carolina Panthers. Then you're in week number 2, thanks to the Hall of Fame game that they both played last week, and we talked about that last week. Now let's talk about the scores from these games. Cincinnati comes away with a 16-14 win over the Lions. The Pittsburgh Steelers get their revenge with Aaron Rodgers sitting on the bench, but having his team win 28-9 over the Green Bay Packers. Indianapolis and New England, the first tie of the year. Yes, it is like kissing your sister, but perhaps not as much during the preseason. The Chargers blow out the Texans 27-7. The Cardinals beat the Raiders 27-14. Tennessee edges San Francisco 19-13 in the Robert Saleh revenge game. Washington earns a 20-7 win over Miami in a Super Bowl John Riggins rematch. Also a rematch of the 17-0 Miami Dolphins versus Washington. Denver 27-7 over Atlanta, with Sean Payton laughing at all of the Falcons fans, thanks to his old rivalry with them when he was with the New Orleans Saints. Tampa Bay earning a 24-16 win over the Jets in the Todd Bowles Bowl. Chicago 34-10 over Cleveland. Buffalo 29-14 over Carolina. Minnesota edges New York 13-10. The Rams beat the Chiefs 2012. Jacksonville and New Orleans go 24-20. Jacksonville wins that one. Baltimore with a 24-7 win over Philadelphia. And Dallas beats Seattle 17-7. Those are your scores. A lot happened in those games. Plenty of players got their reps. Some starters started, like Josh Allen, for example. Most starters didn't, but there were some key performances to look at. Even though preseason obviously doesn't matter in terms of record, or really even how your team looked overall, even when the starters were out there for their very limited sample size, we still can get an idea of the first looks at some of these younger players, or players that we've expected to turn a corner, and I've got a list of 6 to quickly talk about. Well, 5, and then one that is a duo group two different groups all within the same team. So let's talk about Fernando Mendoza first. Obviously, you heard it, that the Las Vegas Raiders lose to the Arizona Cardinals 27-14. Fernando Mendoza got comfortable. I would say shaky at first, not necessarily with his accuracy or with his arm talent, but mostly just processing the field and getting up to speed at the NFL level. I thought at times, early on during his start, he was a bit slow to get from one read to the other. And I think that is to be expected, and that is fair, and perhaps that is why the Raiders are currently planning to start Kirk Cousins, as Fernando Mendoza can get some of the faster reps in practice to get fully up to NFL speed. This was a guy at Indiana who played in a very offensive quarterback-friendly offense that included a lot of RPOs, that included a lot of similar route concepts, a handful that were used again and again and again, like slot fade, that included easy reads on those. And Fernando Mendoza, to his credit, executed those perfectly at the college level. Now the NFL, the offenses get a little bit more complicated, and it's a little bit more to read to go from one progression to one progression to one progression. And early on, I think Fernando Mendoza struggled with that, and it got into a little bit of trouble, but as his start went on, he seemed to settle in quite nicely. Some good anticipation throws. The touchdown to Jack Besh was nice, both on Mendoza's behalf and on Jack Besh's behalf. So overall, a pretty good start to the career of Fernando Mendoza. Will it be enough for him to get past Kirk Cousins for the day one, game one starter of the 2026 Las Vegas Raiders? We will see, because obviously in preseason, a lot of your pre-snap reads are also going to be your post-snap reads. In the regular season, that starts to change a little bit, and then if you are a young rookie quarterback, you can start to deal with some second-guessing and not being confident in yourself based on what you are seeing post-snap. I remember Max Brosmer during preseason last year looked excellent with the pre-snap reads, but that's because the pre-snap reads were also the post-snap reads. Once he got into an NFL regular season game against the Seattle Seahawks, who are rotating almost every single play from whatever two high, one high look they give you at the beginning of the snap, rotating it into something completely different, in order to confuse you, Max Brosmer really struggled to throw with any sort of anticipation, and he was reacting. So, I do want to temper expectations. Even though this was a good start for Fernando Mendoza, I want to temper some expectations of him trying to start in the regular season, because I still think there is a decent chance that it takes him until week 7 or 8 to fully realize what these defenses are doing at the NFL level. Granted, at Indiana, when he's practicing against his own defense did a lot of those post-rotation disguises, those post-snap rotations, I should say, and did them pretty well, and I'm guessing he looked pretty good in those practices as he was gearing up for his Heisman run and to be a number 1 overall pick. So maybe we're not giving him quite enough credit, but it started off slow and got a lot better throughout the course of that start for Fernando Mendoza. Moving on to another rookie quarterback. I've got 3 rookie quarterbacks that I want to talk about. 2 are the first-round picks. One we've already gone over with Fernando Mendoza. The other is Ty Simpson, who on the statistical box score looks really good. Pair of touchdowns, 20 of 25, good yardage. But when you take a look at the film, it is not as eye-popping as those numbers would lead you to believe. So let's pump the brakes there, Dan Orlovsky, because it was play-action flood to the right, play-action flood to the right, play-action flood to the left, play-action flood to the right. I feel like I'm doing the cha-cha slide right now. But that's essentially what it was for Ty Simpson. Now, as that game went on, in his last drive in particular, there were some more intermediate shots. But early on, it was getting him comfortable with the same concept, just from different looks, again and again and again, making one read and delivering. And when it wasn't a play action, when it was a shotgun, straight drop back, it was curl flat, slant flat. it was those two short concepts, which are going to be something you expect Ty Simpson to have down, but it is not something that necessarily you're going to be able to use on every single down once you get to the regular season against first-team defenses. And obviously the Rams are not hoping for that for Ty Simpson this year. Best case scenario for them is that Matthew Stafford wins a couple more Super Bowls and Ty Simpson is ready to take the mantle in year 3 or year 4 after Matthew Stafford has ridden out on top. But in this scenario where, God forbid, Matthew Stafford gets injured or has to miss a game and you have to see something from Ty Simpson, I don't want to use this preseason game performance as proof positive that he's going to all of a sudden excel in his first regular season appearance. He could, but I think if you are using this game as the proof of that, then you're a little bit outside of you're seeing something different for me, because the route concepts were basically all hitch flat, play action flood until that final drive where he pushes a little bit more intermediate down the field, and still even then at that point was going to the first read and wasn't necessarily taking deep shots. You can't blame him for that. That doesn't mean he had a bad performance. It just means we don't really get a full scope of what Ty Simpson could do. We don't know if the Rams offense was just trying to get him confident by doing the concepts that he felt most ready to perform. But to his credit, he executed what he was called to execute, and he wasn't given much more on his plate on top of that. He executed a simple game plan with accuracy, with precision, with good timing, and we will see if that can continue as he gets more concepts heaped upon his plate and as he sees more defenses throughout the course of the regular season while watching film, even if he's not out there getting the actual live reps. In the quarterback room instead is where he'd be seeing a lot of that. So let's temper expectations still on Ty Simpson. I liked Ty Simpson. I had him as a second round, late first round sort of pick. He went mid first round, probably higher than I would have taken him, but I still think he can be a decent quarterback at the NFL level. And then the third rookie quarterback, I should say, that I want to talk about is one Drew Aller. And if you ask me who looked the best out of all of these quarterbacks, the three that I've mentioned, I would say Drew Aller looked the best. And it is crazy to think that. But he was going through a couple of reads at a time. His arm talent has never been the question, and his arm was live against the Green Bay Packers. He made some really good throws. He accounted for touchdowns on, I think, all of his drives, or at least the first 3 drives, 1 rushing, 2 passing touchdowns, I believe. And some of it, yes, was the same old play-action stuff that Ty Simpson was doing, play-action flood, but a lot of times he was getting to read number 2 and read number 3, which was not something we ever really saw from him at Penn State. My pro comp to him was, if he reaches his ceiling, Justin Herbert, but that is like a top 0.5% of predictable outcomes. That is not happening in most realities that exist throughout space-time. On average, I would say more often he falls in the Zachary Mettenberger sort of competition, or sort of comparison. Strong arm, big frame, never really had it down mechanically, though, to put it all together and be a good quarterback at the professional level. Now, Zach Mettenberger is not working, or was not working, with the quarterback mechanic genius that Mike McCarthy is for Drew Aller. Drew Aller is working with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, who worked with Aaron Rodgers, who had really bad mechanics coming out of Cal, got him for years number 2 and 3 of Rodgers as a pro, both of those as backup, and he was able to fix the issues for Aaron Rodgers and turned him into, to credit to Aaron Rodgers, credit to Mike McCarthy, one of the most mechanically sound quarterbacks in the National Football League. By the time he finally took over for Brett Favre, he looked the part right away, mechanically, arm talent-wise, or otherwise. And Drew Aller still has some kinks mechanically. And it is likely going to take more than just one preseason start in order for those mechanics to be all the way fixed. It took Aaron Rodgers, as far as we know, a couple of years working with Mike McCarthy. Now, maybe he was ready towards the end of year one, and it was just Brett Favre blocking him that we didn't really get to see all of those mechanical progresses and the strides that Aaron Rodgers had taken come to fruition. But let's take some time with Drew Aller. This is a promising start. I think there is a chance we could see some Drew Aller starts this season. I think he is a better option than Mason Rudolph. I think he is a better option than Will Howard. I really like what I saw from Drew Aller, with the caveat being there's still a lot of work to do, but he showed that his arm can play at the NFL level if he can get himself mechanically sound and with a aggressive read of defenses that he didn't have as a college prospect at any time. So Drew Aller, very good game. Let's see more. Jeremiah Love got a start for the Arizona Cardinals, and some people are saying, well, he shouldn't have gotten the start. I disagree with that full-heartedly. There is going to be plenty of opportunities for Jeremiah Love to have injured himself like he did with a sprained ankle in this game throughout the course of the regular season. Protecting him in the preseason for a guy that hasn't seen the NFL speed that he needs in order to find the right hole, I just don't like that idea. And you're only giving him 8 to 10 touches in the first half, and that's what they gave him. If he gets injured there, it's kind of a fluke. And he got injured, but it wasn't anything serious. So let's get that out of the way. I'm fine with them starting him, even if it did lead to a rolled ankle, because he needed to get some live reps in to see how to hit the hole when the speed of the defense is not college level, but NFL level. Secondly, the performance, yes, was otherworldly. It was a very good game for Jeremiah Love. Now, he didn't break out any huge big runs, but he looked the part that he did at Notre Dame, which is the ability to find holes, get through them at the first level, and then once he gets to the second level, be a much more creative sort of runner. Whether it be through the spin move or his jump cut, those are his most often used creative moves at the second level that can get him extra yards or create a lane for him to explode through. Didn't get that lane in this game, but was able to make guys miss in a phone booth a ton during this game relative to the amount of carries and touches that he had during the contest. And one of the major thoughts going out in the philosophical discourse that is football Twitter is Jeremiah Love looks very similar to one particular former NFL running back, and that is Adrian Peterson. And I agree to an extent. I'm very high on Jeremiah Love, as you will see in the running back rankings later on tonight, and what I think that he will be during his rookie season. I do think the running style is very similar to Adrian Peterson. Just like James Cook runs exactly like his brother Dalvin Cook, even though they have different parts of their games that they were good at. James Cook has a little bit more power. I would say that Dalvin Cook had a little bit more of the agility. Jeremiah Love looks like he has patterned his jump cut right out of 2007 Adrian Peterson. Violent, explosive, quick. It looks like Adrian Peterson. He runs angry like Adrian Peterson. But let's hold on to our horses. He is not Adrian Peterson, or at least not yet. Let's give him some time, regular season, to prove it. Let's give him some time to get in a game and not get injured during that game. By the way, he's likely shut down for the preseason. No big deal, if you ask me. But, again, another good step in the right direction for Jeremiah Love. I think in order for us to fully declare him an Adrian Peterson level player, there needs to be a little bit more bulk added to the frame. I don't know if it was just the shoulder pads being small or what, but he looked a little bit slight for a running back, at least certainly not Adrian Peterson size and stature. And Adrian Peterson mixed not only those jump cuts and elusiveness and speed and burst, he also wasn't an incredible power runner that could just bowl you over. And I don't think we have seen that yet from Jeremiah Love. Obviously not in the preseason, and then also not quite during his college tenure. I think that would be a piece that would be necessary to add to his game in order for us to crown him as the next Adrian Peterson. I still think he is going to have an excellent season, even in the potential offensive disaster that could be the Arizona Cardinals. But I want to, again, temper expectations when it comes to calling him the next Adrian Peterson. Yes, he runs like him. It looks just like if there were two silhouettes, you probably wouldn't be able to tell one from the other. But he still doesn't quite have that power element to his game that Adrian Peterson had. Doesn't mean he won't have it. Doesn't mean that this is the book is now written on what Jeremiah Love will be as a pro player. But it is to say that it has not been added to his arsenal just yet. Then the final singular player that we're going to be addressing here from preseason is Malik Willis. First drive with the Miami Dolphins, just plays one drive. Has some decent throws, has some good reads, had some open looks, and is really starting to play the part. I still have my doubts about Malik Willis. Not because of who he was at Tennessee, but because the concepts that he was given when he filled in for Jordan Love in 2025 were very quarterback-friendly concepts. He didn't need to get a full slab of the playbook in order to have success. And there were plenty of missed reads during that time where Matt LaFleur made it as easy as possible for Malik Willis to find the right guy in the progression and have that right guy to be open, and Malik Willis still wouldn't pull the trigger. That being said, I didn't think that the offensive game plan was necessarily as quarterback-friendly in this preseason game. I don't think it was more friendly than Matt LaFleur. I don't think it was friendly at all. I think it was just a neutral sort of game plan. I don't think it was unfriendly. I don't think it was friendly like Matt LaFleur gave to Malik Willis whenever he needed to have Willis fill in for Jordan Love. And Malik Willis, I thought, got to his second read, third read a couple more times than he did with Green Bay. So that gives me a bit more confidence, although I'm still hesitant to fully buy in just yet. It does give me a little bit more confidence that the reason that all of the concepts that and plays that Malik Willis had in Green Bay were quarterback friendly were not necessarily due to a lack of ability on Malik Willis's part, but a lack of confidence on Matt LaFleur's part, or just wanting to simplify the offense it might not have even been a lack of confidence, but just wanting to simplify the offense as best as he could for his backup quarterback, even if he did have all the faith and confidence in the world in him. So I think there are some steps being taken forward. Again, I still want to see anything before I think Malik Willis can be a legitimate starting quarterback for a full 17 games of the NFL season and be a successful, legitimate starting quarterback at that. Let's see him start to stack days, as the old cliche adage goes, especially during this time. It's thrown around a lot during training camp. Stack those days. Stack those games, Malik Willis, and I will believe it when I see it. And then final takeaway from the first week of preseason, I really liked the Bengals' defensive line and their offensive line performance. I think they had a dominant showing against the Detroit Lions all throughout the game, even when we get down to the second, third level. And it wasn't even necessarily just Dexter Lawrence and Jonathan Allen during their first series. They looked good, but it was Cassius Howell coming up with a lot of good stops. Myles Murphy coming up with a lot of good stops. There was a lot to like about the Cincinnati Bengals defensive line. Didn't notice a whole lot of Shamar Stewart, the first-round pick from 2025, but that's okay if those other guys can fill in and provide depth as well. And then on the offensive line, I do really like Amarius Mims. Didn't like what I saw from Orlando Brown, but a guy that I wasn't high on out of the 2025 draft, but surprised me with his performance last year and in this game. Dylan Fairchild looked good, and then some of the backups also were showing out and really pushing the pile on runs in order to create lanes for backup and third string and fourth string running backs that came into the game as the game wore on. Now, a lot of these guys will not see the NFL field for anything outside of special team snaps in 2026 and perhaps beyond. But it's nice to know that you have some competent depth if injuries start to come, and I think the Bengals have some competent depth. They might look completely different when they have to go up against first-string players, but they were able to hold their own at least one level of the game. Let's see, at least to give them the chance to see if they can, if called upon, do the same when they go up against starters, or at least do enough when they go up against starters. So those are my preseason takeaways here from week 1. Let me know what you think about those. Who was your favorite rookie quarterback? Was it Drew Aller? Was it Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, or someone else? We saw Carson Beck and Haynes King battle it out in week 1, or during Hall of Fame week, not necessarily week 1. But what has been your favorite rookie quarterback performance so far? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to give us a like and a subscribe wherever it is that you are either watching or listening to this podcast/video podcast. Now that we've gotten away from some of the fake football, so to speak, let's get into some big off-the-field news. And number 1, it is Devon Witherspoon finally getting rewarded with a contract extension. The 2023 first-round pick that I said should have been the Super Bowl MVP during the this most recent Super Bowl because of the pressures that he was able to create as a rusher and also the coverage that he was able to provide on the back end. Devon Witherspoon gets a 4-year contract worth $132 million. And if you ask me, I think he is worth every single one of those pennies. Probably what? I mean, I'm not going to do the math, but that's like a billion pennies, right? 132 million times 100, that's got to be around a billion. Someone who may know math a little bit better than I do off the top of their head can let me know. But that's billions of pennies. Devon Witherspoon should have every single one of those. He is, I think Nick Imenwari kind of became the de facto heart and soul of this defense towards the end of the year. But I think if you look at the true heart and soul of the Seattle Seahawks defense, you look to none other than Devon Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon is a super versatile cornerback. He reminds me a lot of Antoine Winfield with the Minnesota Vikings back in the day, and Buffalo Bills before that. The father of the Antoine Winfield Jr. that most of you are probably familiar with over with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That player's father was an excellent nickel cornerback that could also play on the outside, just like Devon Witherspoon. That could be called upon to blitz, just like Devon Witherspoon. That you could be confident in including in your run fit as a defensive coordinator, just like Devon Witherspoon. You can see the trend that is building right there. And Antoine Winfield was, as much as Kevin Williams and Pat Williams and Jared Allen, was the heart and soul of the Minnesota Vikings defense. There were times where he seemed to single-handedly win the Vikings games with the big defensive plays that he was able to make on a blitz or with an interception or with a punch-out. And Devon Witherspoon plays the exact same way. During the Super Bowl, they rushed Devon Witherspoon at the quarterback, I believe, 7 times on passing plays. During those times, they blitzed 7 times. They rushed Witherspoon 4 times. During those times, they were getting pressure on Drake May every single time because they are either bringing Witherspoon along the along the outside, not the A gap, the C gap or D gap, if there's a tight end, while having the on-the-line edge rusher occupy the tackle so that the running back would have to handle Witherspoon. Or they were overloading from one side and manipulating the offensive line with this nail pressure in which an interior defensive lineman is pushing the guard more towards the center by his route on the pass rush. The edge rusher is taking the tackle to the outside, and that is opening up this large B gap, which even if you have a running back in for protection, it will be impossible for him to get by someone as quick as Devon Witherspoon. He makes that defense work. And now a lot of defensive backs could be able to do that, but I think Witherspoon disguises when he is blitzing so well and times it excellently so that there is a fine line to walk, right? When you are trying to disguise your coverage, but also get off the ball as soon as it is snapped so that you can be an effective part of the pass rush on that play. If you move too early, jump too early, you've blown your disguise, the quarterback knows to go hot. If you go too late, you're blitzing from the outside position, and even if you get a free run at the quarterback, he has a lot more time, maybe an extra second, to make a decision, and you're not speeding up his process as much. Witherspoon finds that balance, finds the exact right time to finally jump at the snap so that the quarterback can't just go hot to the receiver that Witherspoon was just on because he doesn't see it right away, and so that Witherspoon can also get pressure earlier into the clock. Earlier on the clock of the post-snap clock, I should say. The interior mental clock that the quarterback has. So that is one thing. And they did not rush him a ton. They rushed him, I believe, 21 times during the regular season and then ramped it up even more during the postseason. One team that they pressured a ton with Devon Witherspoon, more so than most, during the regular season was my Minnesota Vikings against Max Brosmer. They knew they could confuse the quarterback, and they brought that same sort of game plan into the Super Bowl against Drake May and the New England Patriots. And Witherspoon was the reason why that worked so well. He is also very sticky in man coverage. So he provides he is a little bit undersized at 5'11", which is in the bottom 40%-ish for cornerbacks. 5'11" is not super short. It's taller than Antoine Winfield was, the guy who I'm comparing him to. But it is still not quite to the height if he is going up against a big receiver on the outside, he can get mossed a little bit. And that happened in the first Cardinals-Seahawks game, where Marvin Harrison Jr. probably had his best game of the season, especially in that second half, where Witherspoon wasn't getting burned by the route, but he was just getting burned by the excellent ball placement of Kyler Murray and the size of Marvin Harrison Jr. Sometimes all you can do is tip your cap. That is really the only limitation in Witherspoon's game. It is the height. And even if he is a slimmer stature, it's only the height. It is not the weight, because he tackles with such force that it doesn't matter what the rest of his size is when it comes to him going after the ball carrier. The only time it comes into play is if he is going up against a big receiver on one-on-one coverage on the outside, and more typically, you'll see him in the slot. And even if he is going up against someone on the outside one-on-one, the quarterback still needs to put it in the perfect place in order to hit that wide receiver that is bigger on a jump ball that Witherspoon cannot cut off. So his weakness is mitigated by the fact that he still plays really tough coverage. And when he is in zone, he knows where to go underneath. He knows how to read and react to both the quarterback and the stems of the routes of the receivers that he's going up against. And knowing exactly when to push to the outside, because that's where the underneath routes are going, or when to kind of stay more towards the middle because he's going to have a slant coming behind him, when to gain depth if it's going to be a post coming behind him. He knows how to play those underneath zones perfectly when he's called upon in the slot. And then I think what can really set him apart from a lot of other cornerbacks in the NFL is just the pure ability to be a part of the run fit. Even as an outside cornerback, when you are an offensive coordinator at most levels, and maybe not so much at the NFL level, but still to a certain extent, you don't necessarily have to account for blocking off cornerbacks, the outside cornerbacks at least. Because one, they're not going to be in the box. If you've gotten to that level of the defense, it's probably been a pretty successful run play. And two, running backs have typically the size, speed, athleticism advantage to either run over that cornerback or in open space, which is mostly when they're going to be up against that cornerback, be able to do a move to make a miss. If Devon Witherspoon is your outside cornerback, you have to account for him, and that can change your entire run scheme on a game plan. You have to make sure that now there is, if he's on the right side, this extra gap that needs to be accounted for and blocked off. So maybe you're bringing in another tight end. Maybe you are bringing your receivers closer to the formation, but guess what? That's going to bring Witherspoon closer to the formation. Maybe you're going to motion them out, motion them wide in order to get Witherspoon all the way on the outside. Well, then you better hope that it hits up the middle, because Witherspoon is still going to be able to crash in and string the play out if your running back can't hit the initial inside hole that opens up on like an inside zone run. If it gets to outside zone and the running back can't find a cutback lane, Devon Witherspoon is going to create a numbers advantage to get into the backfield and get your running back. He makes the defense account for offense account for extra personnel that they otherwise would not. And then you combine that with Nicky Manwari, and it's why the Seahawks are able to match 12 and 13 personnel, which is now the hot thing, with their nickel and not have to change out their personnel and keep their speed while also being able to keep their ability to stop the run. It is almost an unfair advantage that both Witherspoon and Nicky Manwari provide, that they can stay in the field in all packages and be the top run defenders in all plays. Not necessarily all the time, but they have the potential to be the top run defender on a given play, meaning we can keep them on the field. We don't have to bring in an extra linebacker. We still have the speed. If you want to bring a tight end against Devon Witherspoon, good luck, because Witherspoon's going to blanket him, because Witherspoon has all that much more athleticism. All of that to say, I think that this contract is absolutely deserved by Devon Witherspoon, and Christian Gonzalez should be getting a similar one fairly soon. Real quickly, a side note on the Seahawks, apropos to that, they do get a new cornerback heading into the 2026 season as they sign Terrion Arnold to a one-year deal after a workout. You might remember Terrion Arnold facing potentially, I don't think this would happen, but it is a potential charge. It is within the realm of possibility. Life in prison for a kidnapping attempt in what was a misinformed revenge attempt on someone who he thought had broken into his house and stolen stuff from him, who was not the actual perpetrator. He took revenge on that person by kind of kidnapping them, tying him to a chair, and that in Florida, with all of the charges that come with it, have the potential to be a life imprisonment sentence. I think it was a dumb decision by Terrion Arnold. I don't think it is necessarily deserving of a life in prison sentence, but I assume it's going to be a NFL suspension regardless. But if it doesn't, or whenever Terrion Arnold is able to get back on the field, if he is ever able to get back on the field, I think he provides an interesting player that reminds me a lot of the guy that left the Seahawks in free agency, which is Riq Woolen. Both strong, physical man corners who struggle in zone, who struggle off the field as well, but that you can rely on if you want to put them in a press engage technique to mirror the hips of the wide receiver in tight coverage. Terrion Arnold had a lot of faults with the Detroit Lions, but I think he was also not used all the time correctly with the Detroit Lions, where yes, the Lions ran a lot of man, but it wasn't necessarily always press man, or at least if it was, Terrion Arnold wasn't given the runway to be a press player right up at the line of scrimmage. And Terrion Arnold struggled in his back pedal, struggled to time his back pedal to and coming off of the back pedal, click and close is what it is called, to the drop back of the quarterback. So he was often giving up way too much space or coming in on the receiver early and over pursuing the path of the football, and then that receiver now has caught the ball with Terrion Arnold's momentum taking him in the complete opposite direction of where that wide receiver wants to turn and go now. However, in the rare times where Terrion Arnold was used as a sticky defender, as a press-in-your-face defender, he is able, without even being physical, to do what he was able to do at Clemson. Or excuse me, not at Clemson, that was Nate Wiggins. At Alabama. And that is stay tight on the hips of the receiver opposite him and mirror him the entire route and not let him get away from you at all. And he doesn't even need to use his hands for that, typically. He can keep his hands by his side or wherever it is that you want him to put them. And his hips and feet are just so quick. He looks like two completely different players when he is playing press and when he is playing any other sort of coverage, zone or off man. He looks stiff in the latter of those two coverages. He looks fluid when he is pressed up. That is when he is most comfortable. And yes, the Seahawks run a lot of match coverage principles, which means typically your outside corners are going to play on off coverage. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if they have somebody that allows them to do a little bit more press, like Devon Wither or like Terrion Arnold, maybe that changes some of what Seattle is able to do in the 2026 season. And maybe it opens up a whole lot on their defensive side that they weren't able to get to last year for whatever reason, not having a necessarily sticky press engage man-to-man corner. So I don't want to completely write off the career of Terrion Arnold. What he did off the field was terrible. He should go to prison for it. He should be suspended for it. I don't have a say in that. I do have a say, I don't have a say in how he plays either, but I do have projection for how he plays if that suspension doesn't happen, if he doesn't go to prison. And that is, I think he would be a good fit for the Seattle Seahawks defense. And by the way, the Seahawks now have the top two defensive players on my draft board from the 2024 draft. Byron Murphy was number 2. Terrion Arnold was my top player. Obviously, that has not come to fruition just yet. Moving on to another defensive player getting a big extension, and that is Keanu Benton of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a defensive tackle. A lot of times at the nose, a lot of times at the 1 technique, sometimes at the 3 technique, but I would say more often than not on the nose or as a 1 tech. He gets 4 years, $72 million. And if that surprises you, I think you have the right to be a little bit sticker shocked. Once we get the full details, it will probably lessen that sticker shock just a little bit. Keanu Benton is a flawed player, but Keanu Benton is a decent player, a good player, and now kind of represents to me that all-in strategy on the defensive side of the football that the Steelers have been building up towards year after year after year. They want to almost overspend on their defense, and perhaps to a fault. Last year, most of that overspending was done on veteran players who are reaching that over the hill side. But those guys are going to retire soon, or those guys are going to have void years left, or those guys' contracts are going to run out. And now, the natural second wave idea off of that is to start paying the younger players that will take those spots long term. Cam Hayward, once he leaves, Keanu Benton will get even more playing time and will become an even more integral part of the Steelers' defense. And he gets the money to be a prove-it player for those 4 years and a long runway to be a prove-it player. And he has done a lot of good things with the Steelers. When I say he's a flawed player, I do not mean that he is a below-average player. I do not mean he is just an average player. He is still an above-average defensive tackle, a good defensive tackle. I don't think he is relatively the same defensive tackle as level of defensive tackle as Devon Witherspoon is level of cornerback, but I think he is a pretty good defensive tackle. Here's what he does well. When he is going up against the run, he is not going to get pushed necessarily all the time. He's not going to overpower you in the run game. He is not going to be able to work through your body to get to the backfield or push you back to disrupt the run. He doesn't have that sort of power, but he also anchors incredibly well when the center and guard are trying to move him. And really, it's not anchoring, but it is this constant movement of his feet that allows him to constantly reset and keep his horizontal space right on the line of scrimmage and not get pushed into the defensive secondary or into the linebacker level of the defense. He just keeps resetting his feet. Now, when he's doing that, resetting his feet, getting them on and off the ground, chopping his feet, he is getting moved parallel to the line of scrimmage. And because of that, he can be washed out of a lot of plays if the offensive lineman is able to kind of catch on to what it is he does. Because in order for him to reset, he has to, if he's not going to give up any room vertically, perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, he's going to have to give some room parallel to the line of scrimmage. Now, when a team's running outside run or outside zone, that way, where you're resetting your feet, that works in your favor as the defensive tackle. If not, then you're getting washed out of the play. So that is kind of the game that Keanu Benton plays. But when he is able to explode through a gap, he has a pretty good first step. He's able to get through the gap. When I say that he's not able to go through a defender, that means I don't think that he can push a defender into the backfield, but he can go through the line of scrimmage by shooting through the gap pretty explosively. And his hands really help him. He has a very excellent swim move and rip move, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender, in order to shoot his gap and to get free. And he also has this really athletic, explosive sort of hop step, where if he is in a gap on one side of an offensive lineman, he can hop step quickly across that lineman's face and get to the other gap if he was supposed to run that crash or run that slant into a different gap. So he has a lot of athletic ability to do that. There's a lot to build upon there, especially if he can get some more sand in his pants. He can be a key part of this Steelers defense, as he already has been for years to come, and really live up to that contract. I want to see him continue to build his game in those areas, but I do like this all-in on the defense strategy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're going to spend 55% of your cap space on defense, why not spend 60% of your cap space so that you can keep the young guys around when these old veterans retire? Eventually, TJ Watt's going to retire. Eventually, Cam Hayward is going to retire. And now you've got their replacements secured for quite some time. Obviously, Derek Harmon entering the second year of a rookie deal, Keanu Benton now, and they also signed Nick Herbig to a pretty big extension. That is what Pittsburgh does well. It is why they will never be confused with a bad organization. Sometimes they may be middle-of-the-road organization and then a middle-of-the-road team for years and years and years, as they have been. But more often than not, or almost always, they will not be confused for a bad organization, a poorly run organization. So that is Keanu Benton, and those are the guys that are getting paid. Now a guy that is going to be losing a little bit of his paycheck, that is James Pierce Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. He has been suspended now 8 games for the 2026 season. I think the Falcons knew that this was coming. They were not using him as a first-team player in training camp because they wanted to give those reps to somebody that was going to be there for the first 8 games of the season, and they assumed that James Pierce would not be. James Pierce was dating a WNBA player in Florida over the offseason. She leaves him, and I think they had been broken up for a while. I'm not exactly sure how long, or if I'm necessarily right with that fact, but allegedly he stalks her, calls her, and tries to pull her out of her car while they are both at a stoplight in Florida after following her and kind of going on a low-speed chase where she is trying to avoid him. Now, the two of them reached a settlement out of court, in terms of the civil case, and I'm not sure if she is going to press any criminal charges. I think she decided not to because of that settlement. But that doesn't mean that the NFL is not going to do its own investigation and find that James Pierce did indeed violate the personal conduct policy. So James Pierce Jr., who had a big issue, his main red flag coming out in the 2025 NFL draft was the fact that he had some off-the-field issues that has now obviously played a big role. So the Falcons gave up a first-round pick. That was part of the risk, was if you were giving up a first-round pick to get back into the first round, to take this player that you were going to have to potentially deal with some of the off-the-field issues, and now that has happened. And now the Falcons don't have either of their edge rushers from the 2025 first round to start the season. Neither Jalen Walker, who will miss the entire year with an injury, or James Pierce, who will miss the first half of the season with a suspension. That's going to be difficult for them to overcome, especially with all of the quarterback battles that are also going on, especially now on the defensive side without Caden Ellis this year as a blitzing linebacker, without David Onyemata. This is going to be a year that I think will be a reset year for the Atlanta Falcons. And maybe not a rebuild because you have those defensive pieces, but on the defensive side of the football, I think you are kind of waving the white flag on the year. Maybe they surprise us. I really like Xavier Watts and what he can do. So I'm not saying that they can't surprise us, but it makes it difficult when your top two edge rushers, both of whom are entering their second season, are out for the foreseeable future. At least half the season in one case and the full season in the case of the other. Now quickly shifting over to what I'm going to call the over-the-hill gang, the guys that are signing contracts midway through training camp. They've gotten avoided the dog days of summer and are hitting the very back portion of training camp where things start to be maybe less intense and have gotten some perhaps contract language to allow them to have some extra veteran days off. And this over-the-hill gang, the players who have signed over the last week, includes Darren Waller, Keenan Allen, and Von Miller. Tight end Darren Waller signs with the Panthers. Wide receiver Keenan Allen, this was just tonight, signs with the Indianapolis Colts. And edge rusher Von Miller signs with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Darren Waller still has some play. I like him better than Tommy Tremble. I think he immediately comes in, and if he's healthy, is the tight end one for the Carolina Panthers. Jatavion Sanders, I don't think that experiment has necessarily worked out for them. There was that player from ASU who I thought was a good blocking tight end. Maybe he still makes the team. But Darren Waller is going to be your top receiving threat as a tight end. I don't know how often you're going to want to use him as an inline tight end. More often than not, you're probably going to want to use him as a power slot or even in some cases an outside receiver. When he was used in Miami last year, he still has the speed, he still has the size, but he lacks a lot of the fluidity and foot agility, I would say, where his routes are not going to be crisp. And a lot of times you're not looking for crisp routes from a tight end, but his hands are going to be strong. And he has been able to adapt his game to be very physical at the top of his route so that he can create leverage not by stemming to the right, head faking to the right to get the defensive back to jump to the right and then going to the left, but creating leverage by walling off, maybe sometimes a little bit of borderline offensive pass interference that's not called, pushing off the defender to create that leverage on the break of his route. He's able to do that really well. Also against zone coverage, he still knows where to sit and where the open zone is going to be if he doesn't have someone necessarily manned up on him. So it'll be tough for defenses, especially linebackers and nickels and safeties who like to use the catch technique on tight ends where they just wait back for the tight end to reach them from their stem, and then they're able to kind of legally get a little bit physical at the top to disrupt the rhythm of the route. Darren Waller is going to fight that back with the physicality. You're not going to be able to play the catch technique against him as a linebacker, which could put you in more dire positions. So I don't think Darren Waller is the 110, 1,000 100-yard tight end he was a couple of years ago, but I think he is a good addition to the Panthers, who just lost Chris Brazzell for the entire season at the beginning of training camp and needed another receiver. Otherwise, I mean, obviously he's a tight end, but receiving option. Otherwise, it would be a whole lot of Xavier Legette, who really hasn't proven his worth at the NFL level. Then Keenan Allen going to the Colts. There is nothing quick about Keenan Allen anymore outside of his ability to turn towards the football as soon as he finds the soft spot in the zone. Very intelligent player, still had 81 catches last year for 770 yards. I don't know if that is the fewest yards per catch for a wide receiver specifically that had over 80 catches in a year. We'd have to look at that. But 81 yards, like 9 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. He's going to be able to be your underneath player for the Colts. You have Josh Downs to be the shifty underneath player, and then you have Keenan Allen to be the soft spot zone finder, possession receiver type guy. And obviously without Alec Pierce, perhaps, for the beginning of the year with this injury that has lingered and lingered and lingered, that was first reported after he signed his big deal with the Colts, it gives another extra security blanket for Daniel Jones on any given play. Probably going to be used more as a security blanket than anything else. Josh Downs you can use as a security blanket, but you can also use on a deep cross over the middle of the field. Tyler Warren you can use as a security blanket, but you can also use him in a variety of different ways. I'm not sure there is much more use of Keenan Allen other than just a 6-yard hitch route guy against zone coverage. He could still have some play. We'll see. But I don't know how much. I think he's about that 60 catch, 500 yard sort of guy, which will get volume, but not necessarily the big plays. Can keep drives going and sustain that, and that's an important part of your offense, but isn't going to provide the explosives. And then Von Miller going with the Dallas Cowboys. Miller, over the last couple of years, has transitioned from being a full-time edge rusher who was good against the run and also good as a pass rusher to really just being a rotational edge rusher now at this stage of his career. Does not have the power that he once had. When he tries to go with a long arm or he tries to go speed to power, I would say more often than not, league average and even worse offensive tackles are able to anchor pretty well against him. So that is a little bit sad, but there are still some parts to Von Miller's game which might not remind you of prime Von Miller, but still look at least a little bit like him. He still has the speed and quickness that is still there. If you do not get deep enough in your set, he will run right over you and get to the quarterback. He doesn't have the same bend. So that is a little bit of an issue because you can, even if you don't get a deep set, you can kind of push him back past typically they're going to try and aim 7 yards into the backfield. You can push him 10 yards back so that he gets behind the quarterback and doesn't get an effective pressure. But he has the speed, he has the quickness, and if he is going up against a lower level tackle, he has the ability to use counter moves to his advantage against him. Some of the more savvy offensive tackles that would have in the past gotten physically dominated by Von Miller are now going to be able to hold their own against Von Miller, but he will be able to take advantage of, like against the Raiders. He had a banner day against DJ Glaze, who is really, really bad. And just had Glaze lunging all over the place because he wasn't sure where Von Miller was going. He still has the speed and quickness to do that. He doesn't have the power and strength to rely on speed to power if you are able to, as an offensive tackle, align your hips with his hips and lock on from there. So that is Von Miller going with the Cowboys. I think he's going to be used as a good rotational edge rusher. They have a lot of rotational edge rushers this year with Rashawn Gary. And most of the meat of their defense lines in with like Quinnen Williams. But they have like Malachi Lawrence. So a lot of good parts for that Dallas Cowboys defense. I don't think they are expecting Von Miller to be the Von Miller of old, and that's good because that's not who he's going to be. I think they're just expecting Von Miller to be who he was with Washington last season, and I think that would be good enough for the expected role on the Dallas Cowboys, or at least the role the Dallas Cowboys should be expecting him to have. And then some other addendums to the Over the Hill Gang. Just one addendum. Aaron Donald had a second tryout with the Los Angeles Rams, and this is like, at this point, it is the high school couple that has been broken up for a year, and they still like each other. You're friends with the guy. You know he likes her. You're friends with the girl. Her friends know that she likes him. We're just waiting for them to get back together. Like, let's stop going through this whole song and dance and get it over with. Because Aaron Donald is going to be a member of the Los Angeles Rams. I have absolutely zero doubt about that at this time. He is going to come out of retirement and make his return and make that defense of the Rams all that much more dangerous. Real quick, injuries that have happened over the last week or so that I've been able to keep track of. Both Jamal Adams and Chase Bisontis. Adams, the safety linebacker hybrid for the Minnesota Vikings, former All-Pro player, out for the season after getting injured in preseason. Chase Bisontis also out for the season, an offensive guard, a rookie for the Arizona Cardinals. He gets injured in the preseason game against the Raiders. He is out for the season. And then Jordan Tyson, who has had, from everything I've been able to discern, an incredible camp this year. Routes have been great. That was my favorite part about him. I had him as my wide receiver 1 in this class because he was the best route runner, hands down. Some people thought that he had too many movements. They were just wrong. I don't know what to tell you. The biggest issue was the injury history that he had. And he had a hamstring injury at the end of last year and at the combine that forced him to wait until his pro day to actually run. And now it's the opposite hamstring that is injured. This is a guy that has also had knee injuries, that has had collarbone injuries all over the place. Now he is dealing with an injury that will keep him sidelined for 2 months. So New Orleans Saints fans will have to wait to see just how dynamic this wide receiver truly is, if he can be a number 2 or even the number 1 with Chris Olave falling back into a nice number 2 slot. That's what I think is going to happen eventually, but it might not happen this year because now he is injured and will miss the first 2 months of the season. That is always the risk when you're taking a guy with a long injury history. For me, in my mind, the jury is still out as to whether guys can actually be injury prone when they are injuring different parts of their body with each and every injury. But in this case, it looks like Jordan Tyson, whether true or not by perception, is injury prone. So those are your injuries. Those are the sad bits. And let us get to our favorite part of the show, and that is the Grey Duck Top 250, where we count down the top 250 players here on the Grey Duck NFL show that we think are going to be the top 250 players, or that I think are going to be the top 250 players. You don't get a say. It's my show. You get a say in the comments below, but for the top 250 of record, we're just going by my opinion. We're ranking the top 250 players that we are projecting into the 2026 season, not based purely on track record, but also projection and the situation that they're in, what we think they're going to do, who will be the best players, not who are the guys in the league that have been the best players up to this point in their career. And by going through that top 250, which we'll do right before the start of the regular season, we are first going through every single position and naming the top 32 players at that position, and today it is the running back position. So let's get into it. I've got a tier for the bottom 6, or not bottom 6, because there's many running backs in the league that are worse than these 6, but the bottom 6 of the top 32. And this is how it goes. These are guys that I think are going to be reliable, but are not splashy in any way, shape, or form at this point. Quinshon Judkins, number 32 for the Cleveland Browns. Ramondre Stevenson, number 31 of the New England Patriots. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, number 30, Washington Commanders. David Montgomery, number 29, Houston Texans. Tennessee's Tony Pollard is coming in at number 28. And then Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings coming in at number 27. Again, those are guys that I think are reliable. You hand them the rock, they are going to get 4 to 5 yards for you, it seems, most plays. Obviously, if it's not blocked up, well, then they're not going to get much of anything. But typically they're going to be able to find small space and squeeze through it, but they don't necessarily have the second level creativity to be explosive running backs. And there are guys that fit this mold that I think are better at it later on in the list, but those are number 27 through 32. This next tier is running backs that I find dynamic, that have that explosive ability, that I'm not sure yet have the ability to
just yet read the defensive line correctly. Rico Dowdle, number 26 of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jadarian Price, number 25 of the Seattle Seahawks. Kyle Nungai, number 24 of the Chicago Bears. And his teammate DeAndre Swift, number 23 of the Chicago Bears. Again, a lot of explosive ability, a lot of creative running. In Kyle Nungai's case, he falls a little bit more into the first category of guys, but I think he is a tier above them and kind of slots in nicely right after DeAndre Swift. But Swift, Price, and Dowdle, I expect explosiveness from this year, but I don't always trust their first move at the line of scrimmage to find the correct hole. And this next tier is more of an amalgamation of different types of players, some that are young and unproven that I think are going to have a good year, some that have been proven players that I think might be taking a little bit of a step back. I'll just get into it, but this is a tier of 6 different players. Number 22, Bashal Tutin of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 21, Travis Etienne of the New Orleans Saints. Number 20, Jonathan Brooks of the Carolina Panthers. Yes, not Chuba Hubbard. I think Jonathan Brooks is going to be the top running back from that Carolina backfield, and it will be like a 2-to-1 split in carries for those guys. Finally, we'll have a good season. He's one of the unproven guys that I have a lot of faith in. Bashal Tutin, again, another one of those unproven guys. Number 19, Breece Hall. Number 18, Bucky Irving. And number 17, Trevion Henderson of the New England Patriots. So Irving, Hall, and Etienne are guys, again, reliable, good, tier above the other guys that I mentioned. I think that they are a bit overrated when people typically do running back ratings. And then Trevion Henderson, Jonathan Brooks, and Bashal Tutin are guys that don't have a ton of track record just yet. Trevion Henderson, a little bit more than the others, but that I think are going to have pretty big roles with their teams. They are on the up. The other guys that I mentioned may be on the downward trend. Next is going to be that tier that I had mentioned before of reliable, non-flashy guys, maybe have a little bit more power in order to carry tacklers for further. And that is number 16, Marshawn Lloyd of the Green Bay Packers, who I don't see a world in which Josh Jacobs plays, and if it is a world in which Josh Jacobs plays or doesn't get a similar suspension to James Pierce, then I don't really want to be a part of that NFL world. I will, because I still like football, but I will do it begrudgingly. So Marshawn Lloyd would be the next guy, and I liked him. He was my favorite running back coming out of that 2024 class. So I have Marshawn Lloyd at number 16. Number 15, I have Javonte Williams. And number 14, I have Kyren Williams. Javonte Williams, Kyren Williams are more reliable than the other reliable backs that I mentioned prior, and have more power and can break tackles with more consistency than the other 6 who are just the find the crease, get 5 yards, and then nothing. These guys can find a crease, get 5 yards, and then continue to push the pile past that and maybe break a tackle and get into the open field. The next tier is of 5 players that I think are going to be used dynamically as very good rushers and very good receivers, but maybe not elite in either of those categories. And that is number 13, Ashton Jeanty of the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 12, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 11, Omarion Hampton of the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 10, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. And number 9, Kenneth Walker of the Kansas City Chiefs. McCaffrey, number 10. I don't want to put him higher than that because I think the age has to eventually start wearing on him. Omarion Hampton was not huge on him out of the draft, but now that he is with Mike McDaniel in a running offense that suits Mike McDaniel and also suits Omarion Hampton, I think he's going to have some success. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to take a step forward, and Chase Brown is going to be about the same guy Chase Brown has always been. When it comes to Kenneth Walker, I think there's a potential that he looks like what Jamal Charles did in 2013 when Andy Reid first came over and took control of that Chiefs offense. Big year as both a receiver and a rusher. I think Kenneth Walker could have a similar year to that in his first season with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this next is the Kyren Williams, Javonte Williams level, but to another tier, the highest tier that these players would fall in for me. And that is number 8, Jonathan Taylor, number 7, Saquon Barkley, and number 6, Derrick Henry. These are the best of that. They have the creativity, they have the reliability. They might lack a little bit something extra that the top 5 on this list have, but they have everything else besides that. And again, that is Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry at 8, 7, and 6. 2 more tiers left. First, 5 through 3, and then the top 2. 5 through 3, speedy guys, maybe don't always have the most power, but they don't have to rely on that power because more often than not, they're making you miss with speed, elusiveness, and burst, and they're also good in the receiving game. Number 5, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Number 4, Jeremiah Love of the Arizona Cardinals. Number 3, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. And then the top 2, the best all-around backs, do everything well. There is nothing that is a weakness in their game. Number 2, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. And number 1, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. That is the top 32 running backs in the NFL heading into the 2026 season. I will repeat them one more time. Number 1, it's Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Number 2, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Number 3 is Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Number 4 is Jeremiah Love of the Arizona Cardinals. Number 5 is James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Number 6 is Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. Number 7 is Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 8 is Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. 9 is Kenneth Walker of the Chiefs. 10 is Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers. 11, Omarion Hampton of the Chargers. 12, Chase Brown of the Bengals. 13, Ashton Genty of the Raiders. 14, Kyron Williams of the Rams. 15, Javonte Williams of the Cowboys. 16, Marshawn Lloyd of the Packers. 17, Trevion Henderson of the Patriots. 18, Bucky Irving of the Buccaneers. 19, Breece Hall of the Jets. 20, Jonathan Brooks of the Carolina Panthers. 21, Travis Etienne of the New Orleans Saints. 22, Bashal Tutin of the Jacksonville Jaguars. 23, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. 24, Kyle Monangai of the Chicago Bears. 25, Jadarian Price of the Seattle Seahawks. 26, Rico Dowdle of the Pittsburgh Steelers. 27, Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. 28, Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. 29, David Montgomery of the Houston Texans. 30, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt of the Washington Commanders. 31, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. And number 32, Quinshon Judkins of your Cleveland Browns. That is the definitive list of the top 32 running backs in the NFL heading into the 2026 season. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below. Drop a rating, drop a like. Let me know what you thought of this week's show. We have one more show coming out this week that will be on Thursday, previewing some of the preseason, picking up where we left off on the news, and then going through the top 32 of yet another position. It should be a fun one. But that's going to be it for this episode of the Grey Duck NFL Show. Thanks for listening. If you got something out of it, subscribe, give us a rating, or go give us a share. That goes a long way. We'll be back on Thursday with more NFL talk. It's straight takes, no fluff. That is the Grey Duck way. Enjoy training camp, enjoy preseason, and we'll catch you on Thursday.